Today, we're diving into a topic that's not just some best practice, it's honestly a developer's superpower. We're talking about testing in Spring Boot and how a really smart testing strategy can completely change how you build your applications.
Let me ask you something. Have you ever stared at a piece of your own code just knowing it could be better, but you're too scared to touch it? You're worried that one tiny change might just bring the whole thing crashing down? If that sounds even a little bit familiar, then you're in the right place.
Because what we're really talking about today is confidence. It's about having the freedom to improve your code, to innovate, and to build awesome things without that nagging fear in the back of your mind. And testing is what gives you that confidence.
And look, these aren't just bullet points on a slide, they feed into each other, creating this amazing positive cycle. When you catch bugs early, you naturally start writing cleaner, more testable code. That higher quality code gives you a safety net so you can refactor without fear. And those very same tests, they become a form of living, breathing documentation, which saves everyone on your team a ton of time and money. It's a real win-win.
Okay, so how do we actually do this? How do we test effectively without just creating more work for ourselves? We need a strategy. And for that, we're going to use a guide for this whole explainer, the famous testing pyramid.
Now, this is way more than just a neat-looking diagram. It's a proven philosophy. It's a recipe, really. It tells us not just what to test, but also the right proportions of each test type so we get the best bang for our buck, the perfect balance of speed, reliability, and coverage. We build this thing from the ground up. The foundation, the biggest part, is made of tons of super fast unit tests. These check every little piece of our code in total isolation. Then, in the middle, we have fewer, kind of slower integration tests. Their job is to make sure all those little pieces can actually talk to each other. And right at the tippy top, we have just a few really slow end-to-end tests that check a whole user journey from start to finish.
All right, let's get our hands dirty. We're going to start at the bottom and lay the foundation of our pyramid with good old unit tests.
The single most important word to remember for unit tests is isolation. The whole goal here is to put a single class or even a single method under a microscope. We want to prove that it does its job perfectly all by itself, with zero outside help or interference from things like a database or a network call. That laser focus is exactly what makes them so blazing fast.
So, how do we actually achieve this isolation? Well, we use some magic from a framework called Mockito. Think of it like you're directing a movie. The @mock annotation, that creates a stunt double for a dependency. It looks and acts just like the real database repository, but we are in complete control of it. Then @injectMocks creates the real star of our show, the class we're actually testing, and cleverly puts all of our fake stunt doubles into place. And this line of code right here, this is us, the director, handing a script to our mock. We are literally telling it, listen, when someone calls your findID method with the number 1, then you are going to return this exact course object I'm giving you. See? We have total control. We're defining reality for our test. All right, we know our individual components are solid. Our actors all know their lines, so now it's time to climb up to the middle of the pyramid and see if they can actually perform in a scene together. This is where integration tests come in. Now, we can be really smart about this. We don't always need to test the entire application at once. Let's say we just want to check if our web controller is handling requests properly. Well, we can do a focused integration test. Spring Boot gives us the @webMVCTest annotation for this exact situation. It only starts up the web parts of our app and keeps things fast by, you guessed it, mocking out the deeper service layer. This table really lays out the two main flavors here. On the left, you've got @webMVCTest. It's focused, it's fast, it only looks at the web layer. We use a tool called mockMVC to pretend to be a browser, and we use @mockbean to fake the service layer. That works just like the @mock we saw earlier, but it's wired into Spring. On the other side, you've got @SpringBootTest. This one's the whole shebang. It loads up your entire application, real database and all, for a much more thorough, but also much slower test. And that brings us to the full-on integration test with @SpringBootTest. This is where we stop faking it. We stop using mocks, and we start using the real deal. We're asking that huge critical question. Can an HTTP request come into our controller, flow through our service, and actually talk to a real database correctly.
A test like this follows a classic three-step dance: arrange, act, and assert. First, we arrange the world by setting it up just how we need it. We save a real course into a test database. Then we act. We use something called test REST template to send a live HTTP request to our running app. And finally, we assert. We check that everything went as planned. Do we get a 200 OK status? Does the response body have the correct data? We've just proven the entire chain works.
And at last, we've climbed to the very peak of our pyramid, the end-to-end or ETE test. With these, we zoom all the way out. We stop thinking about individual bits of code like controllers or services, and we start thinking just like a user.
An E2E test is all about validating a complete business workflow, a user's story. So for example, we wouldn't just test if we can get a course. No, we'd test the whole narrative. Create a student, create a course, enroll that student in that course, and then check that the enrollment actually worked. This ensures that our most critical user journeys are always up and running.
So what's the big picture here? First, always use the testing pyramid as your roadmap. Build a huge, solid foundation of fast unit tests, then layer on those integration tests to make sure things connect. Be really picky with your slow, expensive E2E tests. Save them for the absolute must-work user journeys. And please, remember, this is not a chore. This is a core skill that will make you a more confident and, frankly, a better developer.
So I'll leave you with this final thought. Right now, you have code that works. I'm sure you do. But is it robust? Can you refactor it tomorrow with total confidence? Now that you know the power of the pyramid, I have to ask, what is the very first test you're going to go write? Thanks for watching.